My name is Sarah, and I am 31 years old. I work as a senior financial analyst at one of the largest investment firms in New York City, a position I earned through sheer grit, countless sleepless nights, and learning early that the only person I could ever rely on was myself. My earliest memory of my mother is her getting ready for a date. I must have been 4 or 5 years old, sitting on the closed toilet lid in our tiny bathroom, watching her apply mascara in the mirror. She was beautiful, everyone always said so. Blonde hair that caught the light, blue eyes that sparkled when she smiled, and a figure she maintained religiously because you never know who you might meet. She had the kind of charm that made people trust her instantly, made them want to help her, made them overlook the patterns until it was too late. "Mommy, can we go to the park tomorrow?" I asked, swinging my little legs back and forth, my feet not quite reaching the floor. "Maybe, baby. We'll see." She didn't look at me, too focused on getting her eyeliner absolutely perfect. She leaned closer to the mirror, angling her face, pursing her lips. "You said we'd go last week. You promised." "I know, sweetie, but Mommy's been busy. Mark is taking me somewhere really special tonight. Isn't that exciting? He might be the one." Mark! I barely remembered Mark. He had a mustache and drove a loud motorcycle and lasted maybe 3 months. There had been so many Marks, so many Jasons, so many Brads and Dereks and Christophers. My mother collected men the way other people collected stamps or coins enthusiastically, temporarily, always convinced the next one would be different, would be better, would finally be the one who stayed. We never went to the park that weekend, or the next one, or the one after that. That became the defining pattern of my childhood. Promises made with enthusiasm and forgotten with ease. Plans cancelled without a second thought for whatever man had caught her attention that week. Moments where I desperately needed her, but she was too busy being someone's girlfriend to remember she was supposed to be my mother. My father left when I was 2 years old. I have exactly 0 memories of him, just a handful of photographs my mother kept in a shoebox at the back of her closet and rarely talked about. The photos showed a dark-haired man with kind eyes and an uncomfortable smile, someone who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When I was old enough to ask about him, she'd wave her hand dismissively and say, "He couldn't handle the responsibility of a family." Men are like that sometimes, Sarah. They make promises they can't keep. That's why you have to be smart about it. Always have a backup plan. Her backup plan seemed to involve a rotating cast of boyfriends, each one moving through our cramped 2-bedroom apartment like a temporary tenant, leaving behind cigarette smoke or cologne that hung in the air long after they'd moved on to someone easier, someone with less baggage, someone without a kid watching their every move with suspicious eyes. There was David first, or at least he was the first one I remember clearly. I was 7. He lasted 8 months and promised to teach me how to ride a bike. He seemed nice enough, he worked construction, had rough hands and a genuine laugh. "Next weekend, kiddo," he'd say every time I asked about the bike riding lessons. Next weekend for sure, but next weekend never came. He left suddenly, the way they all eventually did, after some fight with my mother that I heard through the thin walls of my bedroom. My mother cried for 3 solid days, barely getting out of bed except to smoke cigarettes on our small balcony and stare at nothing. I was 7 years old, making myself cereal for breakfast because we were out of milk, walking myself to school because she was too heartbroken to function, coming home to find her in the same position I'd left her in. Then there was Tom when I was 9. He moved in after they'd been dating only 6 weeks. I remember the day he carried his boxes into our apartment, how my mother giggled and touched his arm constantly, how she looked at him like he'd hung the moon. Tom didn't like kids much, he made that clear pretty quickly. He told my mother one night, thinking I was asleep, that I was too much responsibility for a woman trying to find happiness, that she needed to think about what she wanted out of life. My mother chose him over defending me. She started asking me to stay in my room more when he was over, to be quieter, to make myself scarce. "Tom's had a long day at work, Sarah. Why don't you go read in your room?" Or, "Sarah, we're trying to have adult time. Can you give us some space?" Tom lasted a 1.5 years, during which I learned to be invisible in my own home, to stay silent during dinner, to never need anything that might inconvenience their relationship. When he finally left, he found someone else. Someone without a kid. My mother was devastated again. And again I found myself comforting her instead of the other way around. There was Carlos when I was 12. He actually seemed nice at first, which made it worse somehow. He'd ask about my day at school, help me with math homework occasionally, bring home pizza for all of us on Fridays. I let myself hope, really hope, that maybe this one would stick. That maybe I'd finally have something resembling a stable family, something that looked like what my friends had, a mom and a dad figure who came to school events together, who planned weekend activities, who were just there. 6 months in, Carlos cheated on my mother with her best friend Jessica. The betrayal devastated her. She cried for weeks, called in sick to work, stopped cooking dinner or doing laundry. And somehow, at 12 years old, I found myself in the role of comforter and caretaker. I rubbed her back while she sobbed into her wine glass. I made sandwiches for both of us because she couldn't bring herself to eat. I told her it would be okay, that she'd find someone better, that she deserved more, all the things a parent should be saying to a child, reversed. Why do they always leave, Sarah? She'd cry, mascara running down her face. What's wrong with me? Why can't I find someone who stays? I wanted to scream, what about me? What about what's wrong with constantly leaving your daughter to raise herself while you chase after men who clearly don't care about either of us? What about the fact that I'm 12 and playing therapist to my own mother? But I didn't scream. I never screamed. I just held her and said soothing things and buried my own feelings so deep I sometimes forgot they existed at all. The promises were actually the worst part of everything. Worse than the neglect, worse than the parade of men, worse than being parentified before I hit puberty. The promises felt deliberately cruel, even though I don't think she meant them that way. I think she genuinely believed them when she made them, which somehow made it all hurt more. Sarah, once I get back on my feet financially, I'm taking you to Disney World. I promise. We'll do all the rides and see the princesses and stay in one of those nice hotels. Sarah, next year when things calm down with work, we'll take that mother-daughter trip you've been wanting. Just us, maybe the beach, or maybe we'll drive up the coast. Wouldn't that be amazing? I promise. Sarah, I know I've been distracted lately, but this weekend is all about us. No men, no distractions, no phone calls, just you and me doing whatever you want. I promise. Every single promise evaporated like morning dew under harsh sunlight. There was always a reason, always an excuse that somehow made sense in her twisted logic. She lost her job and needed to focus on finding new work. She met someone new, and the relationship needed her attention during this crucial bonding period. She was too stressed, too tired, too broke, too busy, too anything except available for her own daughter. I learned to stop believing her somewhere around age 13. That was the year I stopped asking for things, stopped hoping she'd follow through, stopped setting myself up for the disappointment that came as regularly as clockwork. 13 was also the year of my 8th grade graduation ceremony. It was nothing fancy, just a small ceremony in our middle school gymnasium, cheap folding chairs set up in rows, a makeshift stage with a podium draped in our school colours. But it mattered to me. It mattered so much. I'd worked incredibly hard, made honor roll every semester despite having no help with homework, despite living in the chaos of my mother's revolving door love life, despite essentially raising myself. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday. My mother promised me, looked me directly in the eyes, and promised that she would be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world, baby. I'm so proud of you. I'm taking off work early and everything. I'll be in the 3rd row on the left side, okay? You'll be able to see me when you walk across the stage. I believed her. God help me. After years of broken promises, I actually believed her this time because she'd seemed so sincere, so genuinely proud. I sat in that gymnasium in my carefully chosen outfit, a dress I'd bought with 3 months of saved babysitting money, because my mother said she was too broke to buy me something new, and scanned the crowd obsessively for Komini. Her face, The third row, left side. That's where she said she'd be. The ceremony started. I kept looking. They went through the entire alphabet of names. My section came up. Sarah Marie Brennan. I heard my name echo in the gymnasium. I walked across that stage, shook the principal's hand, accepted my certificate with its gold seal, smiled for the photographer. The seat I'd been staring at, third row, left side, remained empty. All the seats my mother might have sat in remained empty. I walked off that stage with my diploma and a smile plastered on my face while something inside me quietly died. Other kids ran to their families afterward, were swept up in hugs and congratulations, handed flowers and cards, taken out for celebratory dinners. I stood alone near the bleachers, holding my certificate, watching families be families, feeling more isolated than I'd ever felt in my entire 13 years of life. She showed up 2 hours later, pulling into the parking lot just as I was starting to walk home. She rolled down her window, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Hey, baby. Sorry I'm late. I was having coffee with this guy I met online. His name's Brad. He's really great, and we just totally lost track of time. And then my phone died, so I couldn't even check what time it was. But I'm here now. How was it? Tell me everything." I stared at her, at this woman who'd given birth to me but had never really been my mother. This woman who'd just missed one of the most important moments of my young life because she'd been on a coffee date with a stranger. "It was fine," I said flatly, opening the passenger door. "Can we just go home?" "Don't be like that." I said, "I'm sorry. These things happen. But hey, let's celebrate. Want to go get ice cream?" "Tell me all about the ceremony." I told her nothing. I went home, locked myself in my room, and cried silently into my pillow because I'd learned years ago that crying loudly only made her uncomfortable, and then she'd get upset with me for being upset, and somehow I'd end up apologizing to her for having feelings about her failures. That night, I made myself a promise. I would stop expecting anything from her. I would stop hoping. I would stop believing that this time would be different. I would figure out how to raise myself, how to get through high school, how to get to college and escape. I would do it alone, because alone was all I'd ever really had anyway. The day I moved into my NYU dorm, I had 3 suitcases, $847 in my checking account, and nobody to help me. I took a Greyhound bus from California to New York, a grueling 3-day journey with crying babies, weird smells, and uncomfortable seats because it was cheaper than flying. I dragged my suitcases through Port Authority alone, figured out the subway system through tears and confusion, and hauled everything up 4 flights of stairs because the dorm elevator was broken. My roommate Jessica arrived 6 hours later in a completely different reality. Both her parents came, plus her younger sister. They had a U-Haul packed with furniture, bedding, decorations, a mini-fridge, a microwave, plastic storage containers from Container Store still in their wrappers. Her mother fussed over every detail, measuring spaces, arranging and rearranging items. Her father assembled a bookshelf and desk lamp. Her sister hung fairy lights and helped organize closet space. They ordered pizza for everyone and invited me to join their family dinner, and I sat there eating free pizza, watching this functional family operate like a well-oiled machine, and felt a hollowness so profound I had to excuse myself and lock myself in the bathroom until they left. That was my introduction to college, constant painful reminders of what I didn't have, who wasn't there, what normal looked like for everyone else. Money was my biggest source of anxiety. I had budgeted everything down to the last dollar, but textbooks nearly destroyed me that first semester, $800 for required books. I learned quickly to haunt the library reserve section, to find PDFs on questionable websites, to share books with classmates and photograph every single page I needed with my phone. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for weeks at a time. I wore the same rotation of 5 outfits and prayed nothing would rip or stain beyond repair. While Jessica and my floormates went out to clubs and restaurants, casually dropping $50, $80, $100 on a single night out, I was working 3 jobs just to survive. I cleaned bathrooms in the freshman dorms at 6 a.m., scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, emptying trash while everyone else slept off their hangovers. I worked the front desk at the campus gym from 4 to 8 p.m., scanning student IDs and handing out towels. I picked up weekend shifts at a coffee shop in the village, where hipsters argued about film theory and left decent tips if you laughed at their jokes and pretended their screenplays were genius. Between classes and work, I slept maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. I mainlined coffee and energy drinks. I did homework at the gym desk between checking in students. I studied on the subway during my commute. I wrote papers during slow periods at the coffee shop. My laptop balanced precariously on the counter. I had zero social life. While everyone else was having the quintessential college experience, joining clubs, going to parties, making lifelong friends, having wild stories to tell, I was in a constant state of exhausted survival mode, just trying to make it to the next day, the next paycheck, the next semester. My mother called occasionally, always at the worst possible times. "Sarah, how's college treating you?" "It's fine, Mom. I'm actually at work right now, so I can't really talk." "Oh, this will just take a minute. I wanted your advice about something. So there's this new guy I'm seeing, Trevor, and he's amazing, but we had this weird fight last night, and I just need to talk it through with someone." She'd proceed to talk for 45 minutes straight about her relationship problems, her job frustrations, her financial stress, while I silently wiped down tables or organized towels or made lattes for impatient customers, making listening noises at appropriate intervals to convince her I was paying attention. She never asked if I was okay, never asked if I needed money for food or books, never asked about my classes or my grades or whether I was making friends, never offered help of any kind. Our relationship was a one-way street, and it had been that way for so long I'd stopped expecting anything different. Sophomore year changed everything. I took an introductory economics course to fulfill a general education requirement, expecting it to be dry and boring. Instead, I discovered I had a genuine talent for financial analysis. Numbers made sense to me in a way nothing else ever had. There was a logic, a predictability, a cause and effect clarity that I found deeply satisfying. Unlike people, numbers didn't lie. They didn't make promises they couldn't keep. They didn't disappoint you or abandon you. They just were what they were, following rules and patterns you could learn and master. I changed my major to finance at the end of sophomore year. My academic advisor warned me it was an incredibly competitive field. The students who succeed in finance usually have significant advantages, he said carefully. Family connections in the industry, the financial ability to take unpaid internships, networks built through their parents' colleagues. I had none of those things. No connections, no financial cushion, no network. "I'll figure it out," I told him. I always did. Junior year, I applied for every single paid internship I could find. Most finance internships were unpaid, essentially requiring you to work full-time for free if your parents could afford to subsidize you for a summer. It was a system designed, whether intentionally or not, to keep people like me out. I applied to 47 positions. I got rejected from 44 of them. The 3 interviews I managed to land, I prepared for, obsessively. I researched each company until I could recite their quarterly earnings reports from memory. I bought one professional interview suit from a thrift store in Brooklyn and had it tailored at a place in Chinatown for $20. I practiced answering common interview questions in the mirror until I sounded confident and polished instead of desperate and terrified. I got one offer, a small, relatively unknown investment firm in Midtown, offering $15 an hour for a summer internship. It wasn't prestigious. It wasn't a name that would impress anyone. But it was real experience, real money, and a real foot in the door. I took it without hesitation. That summer, I worked 60-hour weeks at the firm while still picking up weekend shifts at the coffee shop to cover my summer sublet rent. I lived in a cramped bedroom in Queens that I shared with 5 other people in a 3-bedroom apartment, sleeping on a mattress directly on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame. But I was learning, actually learning real, applicable skills. The firm was small enough that I wasn't just fetching coffee and making copies. I was building financial models, analyzing market data, sitting in on actual client meetings, contributing to real projects that mattered. My supervisor was a woman named Margaret Chen who'd clawed her way up from nothing herself. She seemed to recognize something familiar in me, that hunger, that desperation masked as ambition, that absolute refusal to fail. "You're hungry," she told me one afternoon, reviewing a model I'd built. "That's good. This industry eats people who aren't hungry enough. But you also need to be smart about it. Work hard, yes, but work strategically. Make yourself indispensable. Learn everything you can from everyone around you." I absorbed her advice like gospel. When summer ended, Margaret called me into her office. "We don't usually do this for interns," she said, "but I'm recommending you for a part-time position during the school year. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule around your classes. You interested?" I almost cried right there in her office. Yes, absolutely yes, thank you. Senior year was brutal. I juggled 4 classes, 20 hours a week at the firm, and weekend shifts at the coffee shop. I had 0 free time, 0 social life. Just work, class, sleep, repeat. But my resume was building, my bank account was slowly growing, and for the first time since starting college, I could see an actual path forward that didn't involve drowning in debt forever. I graduated with a 3.7 gigapascals and $80,000 in student loans, but I also had 2 full-time job offers. Real offers from real companies, offering real money that seemed impossible after years of scraping by. My mother didn't attend my graduation. She'd just moved to Seattle with her newest boyfriend and said flights were too expensive right now. She texted, "So proud of you, honey. Send pictures." I sent nothing. I celebrated alone. Her story, part 3. The pattern of exploitation and new husband. For the next 7 years after graduation, I kept my mother at a carefully maintained distance. Our communication dwindled to occasional phone calls every few months and obligatory holiday texts. I moved to New York permanently, climbed the corporate ladder aggressively, and built a life she knew absolutely nothing about. I was strategic about what I shared. When she asked about work, I said fine and changed the subject. When she asked where I lived, I said a small place in the city without mentioning I'd bought a condo. I kept my LinkedIn profile minimal, just financial analyst, with no company name, no details that might reveal how well I was actually doing. This wasn't paranoia. This was self-preservation based on pattern recognition. I'd watched my mother operate my entire life. She had a gift for finding people with resources and extracting everything she could from them until the well ran dry. She'd done it to her own sister, borrowed $8,000 for emergencies, and never paid back a cent. She'd done it to friends, co-workers, boyfriends. It was her survival strategy, honed over decades. Then 2 years ago, she called with big news. "Sarah, I'm getting married. His name is Frank, and he's wonderful. We're perfect for each other." She didn't invite me to the wedding. She told me I didn't need to come since I was so busy with work. They got married at a courthouse with 2 random witnesses. I met Frank once when they came to New York for their honeymoon, a weekend trip where they expected to crash at my apartment because hotels were too expensive. Frank was 53, unemployed, and within 20 minutes of meeting him, he'd mentioned his temporary cash flow problems and hinted that family should help family. My mother gazed at him adoringly, touching his arm constantly, laughing at his unfunny jokes. I recognized the pattern instantly. This was just another bad decision in a lifetime of bad decisions. The only difference was this time she'd legally tied herself to him. After that visit, our communication became even more sparse. A text every few months, one phone call where she complained about money and Frank's job search and how unfair life was. I thought I'd successfully created enough distance to protect myself. Then 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I'd received a massive year-end bonus, $320,000, reflecting an exceptional year of performance. Combined with my $225,000 salary and investments, my net worth had crossed $1.2 million. At 31, I was a self-made millionaire. I told exactly 2 people, my financial advisor and my best friend Rebecca. Somehow, my mother found out anyway. 2 days after I deposited that bonus, my phone rang. Sarah, sweetheart, I've missed you so much. She'd never called me sweetheart. Every instinct screamed danger. The conversation was painfully transparent. She'd heard through the grapevine about my bonus. She was so proud of me. She and Frank wanted to visit to discuss important family matters. I should have said no, but some broken part of me needed to see how low she'd actually go. Fine, 2 weeks from Saturday. I spent those 2 weeks preparing. I did what I do best: research. I'm a financial analyst. Due diligence is my specialty. What I found was catastrophic. Frank had filed for bankruptcy twice. He had over $180,000 in combined debts, maxed out credit cards, personal loans, back taxes, unpaid medical bills, even child support for a daughter he'd never mentioned. He'd been sued 14 times. My mother had co-signed a car loan for him that was already delinquent. They weren't just struggling, they were drowning in a disaster entirely of their own making. And now they were coming to me for a bailout. The Saturday they arrived, I was ready. I'd set up a recording device. New York is one-party consent. I'd prepared copies of all the financial records. I'd consulted a lawyer about my legal obligations, which were exactly 0. They showed up 45 minutes late. My mother looked older, heavier, exhausted. Frank looked unremarkable and carried himself with false confidence. After awkward small talk, my mother got to the point. We need to talk about family helping family. Frank and I are in some financial trouble. Nothing we did wrong, just bad luck. How much? I asked directly. About $200,000. I didn't react. I'd expected this range. We thought maybe you could help us out. Not alone exactly, more like family helping family. You have so much, and you don't even have kids or a husband. We're in real trouble here. I looked at them both. This woman who'd missed my graduation for a coffee date with a stranger. This man who'd contributed nothing to my life but expectations. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to give you $200,000 to pay off debts you accumulated through your own terrible choices? What came next would change everything.